Okay, good morning to everybody, and we are very happy. As we know very well, is the first initiative in presence from many months, days. It's it's very strange in a certain way to be able to meet together and to restart to work, to have some consideration, and we we are really very happy, and there is a real and concrete emotion and connected with this, and also the problem, the situation of the pandemic. There is a very important consequences connected with the topic of this meeting too. We are considering only the emergency of the crisis of the pandemic situation, but also there is other consequences very important connected with the fragile dimension of the society. And also for this reason, it's a very important chance that we have together. And also, it's not a conference, this one, but also is our days of work together to create a common plan of activities. We hope so. And I want to thank a lot everybody to stay here with this very fresh temperature, and instead of to stay near the sea, we are here in Arca di Teatro, but we will try to do our best. Also, we are very happy to have presented to you yesterday our Medea Desir. Is the last production, but we have started to work to the new production, and is another aspect of the resistance of the women and men of theater. It's very important to continue to have performances, to prepare performances, and also to host performances, and create the work of Arca di Teatro, the work of the Italian Center of ITI has invested a lot in the idea of residencies. Artistic residencies is one of the aspects more pregnant and with a real meaning for our research. And also, this last period was very difficult also for this aspect. But we are trying to create the best connection to develop something. We don't know what will happen in the next month. Also, we have no certitude about the situation that we have to face to front. But in any case, we have learned many things in this last period. Also, we have reconsidered the opportunity of the streaming. Also, is another topic possible that we have to consider generally. But also, in the meanwhile, it's very important to exchange our experiences one more time. This meeting is connected in the framework of the Theatre in Conflict Zone network, and also we have Thomas that will start with the first intervention today, that is with the ACAR group, Action Committee, Artists' Right of ITI. And also for this reason, we have a first message of our General Director of ITI, Tobias Biancone. It was not possible for him to stay here. He's very sorry for this, and also we are very sorry, because it's very important in this moment to stay together and to relaunch the activities of the worldwide community of International Theatre Institute also. And also for this, yes, we start with the...
Dear colleagues, dear friends, what a brilliant idea to create the confidence with the inspiring title Arca di Pace. What an excellent choice to invite practitioners, artists and academics who are able to share their important viewpoints with each other and the audience. Arca di Pace, an arc that is bringing peace, that is what the world needs. I hope that this conference is just the beginning for future endeavors of how the performing arts communities, their players, thinkers and artists can build peace on a local and global level. Bon voyage to all of you. May the journey of this Arca di Pace is creating strong waves for a better world and leave traces of peace in the water. Bon voyage to each of you.
Okay, this is the greetings of Tobias Biancone, and also I want to say just a few words connected with the title. You know, the Ark of Peace is an element of in the Jewish tradition, is a place very important in which we can collect all the dimension of the different cultures, different different tribes that arrive to stay together, to create an alliance. And this is very important also in this period. We know, you know that we have worked a lot in the Cisjordania, in the place of the occupied by Israeli army. We would like to come back in Jenin in October, but we don't know if we will be able to stay there in the refugee camp of Jenin. And also last month we have another experience of the war in that area. And also for this reason we have to relaunch always this idea of the alliance of the different countries, and the perspective is also to be able to create the condition of the dialogue, the mutual understanding that I want to remember is one of the most important goal of ITI community, to create the condition of the dialogue between different cultures and to overcome the need of the war, the need of the conflict. That is something that is connected with the nature of the mankind also. It's not an utopia, this one is a perspective that we have to create always together. And also I will speak about this on my when I will speak for my intervention in the last day. And now I give the floor, and we can start to Thomas Engel. The title of the intervention is Gaps and Bridges, Artists' Rights and the German ITI Center.
Thank you. Thank you. It's on, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, Fabio and Roberta and all the team of Astragali, thank you very much for inviting us here for this very first meeting. Should we call it already after pandemic? But however, it is very touching to have a live meeting with our colleagues, the first international one after so many months of Zoom gatherings and digital contacts. And it was great to celebrate this yesterday evening with a theater performance, with a live theater performance of the mythologic theme of Medea under the Italian stars in an environment of nature and history. And yeah, I only can congratulate you that you took this avant-garde role to make this meeting happen. And we feel more than ever how important it is to meet. We probably had enormously extent of international exchanges within the last months because it was so easy to get the colleagues just as a click away from your desktop. But it's definitely a difference to meet and to come together and to share the same space. I was invited to speak as a representative of the German ITI Center and a coordinator of the Artists' Rights Committee on best practice about theater as a tool for conflict and mediation, and in a broader sense for social inclusion and for the enhancement of interculturalism and of fundamental values. I will mostly refer to the broader sense. Recent discourses are showing that despite of all intention, all expressions, activities and interactions are read in the context of the acting person or group. Therefore, I think it is important to spend the motivation gaze, the why, in front of the how, the methods and practices. With some thoughts about gaps and bridges, artists' rights and the German ITI Center, I will first try to contextualize the acting person, the German ITI Center, and the problematic relation between peacekeeping generally as such and Germany as a nation with a national center. So the whole idea of ITI is based on national centers. And this is a concept from the last century, which we still have, and we still have much more different developments which going far beyond the idea of nations. Looking to the history, the German position within the world community is anything but self-evident. The German ITI Center has been founded in the first decade after the Second World War. Germany was the main driving force for this war. German people did most horrible war crimes, not only on battlefields, but on civilians across the whole Europe and beyond, in cities, ghettos, villages, and in concentration camps. They invented the Holocaust against the Jewish people, called it Endlösung, final solution. The international community invented for Germany and its allies the first international trial on war crime, held in Nuremberg 1945-46. The ITI, founded 1948 under the umbrella of the UNESCO, accepted at their General Assembly 1957 and 59 first the Federal Republic of Germany and then the German Democratic Republic as members. This is an embracement which was definitely not self-evident, as I said before. It was a trust, not in the past of Germany, but more in the future. And the people who were theater artists were mostly the reason for this trust. There were people who convinced German audiences about a different form of Germany, about a different Germany. Like Brecht, especially at the Theatre of Nations Festival in Paris and in Edinburgh. And I refer to this to recall the enormous trust the international theatre community had on theatre culture as a peace-building source. And to accept a nation, even if divided in that time in two, which has been proved as an aggressive militant system responsible for 2 world wars and countless atrocities. The new Germanys, both of them, became integral parts of the after-war 2-block system around the US and the Soviet Union. They walked parallel, very active in bridge building, and were at the same time both parts of sometimes spearheads of the Cold War policy. Theater artists from both Germanies tried to become a part of the worldwide theater community. East Germany theater with the Berlin Ensemble and the Bertolt Brecht became world famous. The East Germany ITI held every year an international Brecht conference, the so-called Brecht Dialogue. The ITI Liaison Committee, a meeting of all international theater NGOs, met every year in East Berlin. Both Germanies organized ITI World Congresses, 1975 in West Berlin and 1981 in East Berlin, and after the unification 1993 in Munich. Germany invited the Theatre of Nations Festival 1979 to Hamburg and started afterwards the Theatre of the World, Theater der Welt Festival, as the first regular German international festival for contemporary theatre. Theatre directors and scholars from Germany were invited via the ITI network to other countries to direct Goethe and Brecht, to speak at conferences, to teach at universities and to give workshops. Both German centers coordinated for more than 1 decade the International Music Theatre Committee, with the president in Munich and the General Secretariat in East Berlin. The West German Center supported with a bilateral contract for many years the center of Bangladesh with travel costs and started exchange with the theater community in the new post-Soviet Baltic states and the post-Yugoslavian states. I myself organized as a dramaturg for the East German Center its last activity before closing, a workshop on Shakespeare motifs with the participants from Africa and Arabic countries in 1990. The unification of both Germanies was a historic challenge also for the culture. How would a unified Germany look within the world theater community in the future? After decades of funding negotiations, the sudden moment created a rise of the financial budget for the German ITI to meet new challenges of unification and to continue the activities of both centers. Most of the personnel members of the East German Center, which closed end of 1919, were elected by their colleagues of the West German Center. A next historic challenge for ITI would consider the so-called War on Terror after the attacks on the New York Twin Towers on September 11, 2001. I have already described several times to my ITI colleagues our project series My Unknown Enemy, a workshop series about enemy images, held with participants from countries with ongoing historic mutual conflicts. The workshops were hosted by countries with own conflictual experiences, and we developed our experiences from this series to a 6-year bilateral project with the Sudanese ITI Center to build up a competence center for theater in conflict zones in the post-Civil War Sudan. In 2011, the ITI World Congress in Xiamen, China, voted the Action Committee for Artists' Rights as from a vote from a working group of the Swedish and the German Center to an official committee. First one of this kind in the history of ITI. ITI was more or less aware to interfere in political issues. It was mostly related to only artistic issues and artistic exchange, and the political dimension was kept as far as possible outside. This was just on the surface, but on the underground, the political conflicts and the political dimension was already on board. So we said that ITI needs to be a tool for the rights of the artists, because ITI has a voice at the UNESCO and is the only NGO who really could stand for the artists and the performing arts in an organization like the UNESCO. So we should use this political voice and this political weight and the reputation for the rights of the artists. The motion of the Congress appealed to the Congress to increase the emphasis on human rights and fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of expression, information and communication, to protect and promote the cultural diversity. More and more cases of censorship and violence against artists became public with Arca work and reports. The idea to create a UNESCO reaction scheme for artists and freedom of artists' expression similar to journalists and the freedom of press became more and more support. We found international networks and initiatives which we joined effort for freedom of artistic expression, like Free Muse, Artists at Risk Connection, but also with other European artists network like ITM, On the Move and the Culture Action Europe. In Germany, we are in close contacts with the Martin Roth Initiative, a shelter residency program for international artists at risk, created by the German Foreign Ministry on initiative from German theater directors and managers, amongst them Joachim Lux, our former president. The field of artists' rights touches many areas. Our work refers to the UNESCO Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions and the UNESCO recommendation concerning the status of the artists and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So these 3 columns are important for us. And it's not by chance that many of these areas are interfering with each other and are not only limited to just single aspects of it. The condition, for instance, of artistic production are as well important as the public distribution of artworks. We provide information for artists about their rights, about tools and sources to resist the growing political pressure, but also the economic censorship and the growing global injustice and imbalance of mobility, access to markets and to funding sources. Since 4 years, our member Cornelia Dümke represents the World ITI at the Intergovernmental UNESCO Committee for the Diversity of Cultural Expression and the there newly created Civil Society Forum. She was one of the editors of the 2 first civil society reports on the implementation of the UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity. As the only performing arts organization, ITI has access to this important UNESCO level to take political action for the performing arts. But also new impulses were given and needs to be continued to improve the cooperation between ITI and UNESCO on the national levels. Within the 40 years of existence, the German ITI has found its place among the national centers of the World ITI. We are trying to justify the trust in the German theater community as open for exchange and cooperation, willing to share and to learn from others. New concepts will be developed, new challenges needs to be faced. The pandemic creates new ways of cooperation as well as new injustices. Internationality and diversity are no longer relations between different countries. Cross-border means in between also the borders between divided and fragmented society. Social distancing and theater are contradictions. Freedom of expression is no longer only a problem of authorities and artists, but also of artists and audiences, of different communities of pressure groups. And censorships and self-censorship goes far governmental authorities. On the other hand, the pandemic also creates an enormous system to justify the limitation of elementary civil rights and the surveillance of citizens. In many countries, these limitations are used to silence performing art and to suppress artists and all forms of critical, open discussion. To resume, artists' rights should not be a project of a single committee within ITI. The international mutual interdependency of political decisions in each country is non-reversible. Attacks to performing arts and their public space in their communities are influencing us all. To strengthen the solidarity between artists remains a central transversal task for the whole ITI. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And also, we have the program of the intervention. I propose to you to listen now the intervention of Ottavia Arenella, and then we have a break with some coffees and some sweets. Very poor offering, but and also now the title of the intervention of Ottavia Arenella is Heritage Beyond Walls.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for introducing me and inviting Fondazione Sant'Agata to this event. And of course, I bring the greetings of Paola Borrione, President of Fondazione Sant'Agata, which I'm trying to represent today. So I want to briefly introduce our work and what we make. Fondazione Sant'Agata doesn't act directly in performing arts like you, but we work for performing arts, but we can say for cultural heritage more in general. So Fondazione Sant'Agata is an independent research center based in Turin. Born in 2018 after 10 years of experience in researching projects with Walter Sant'Agata, who is considered as sorry, okay, I don't think that you can read, but it's so small. Okay. So I was saying that we worked in past with Walter Sant'Agata, who is considered as one of the first cultural economists at the international level and one of the pioneers of cultural economics. We work especially in cultural heritage and creative industries with research projects or training and capacity building projects, with a focus, of course, on sustainability and on the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. Our working areas are mainly two: heritage management models for museums, cultural institutions, or UNESCO's programs, and cultural production and innovation relating to, for example, cultural jobs or research about creative industries. Over the years, we also organized conferences and training programs addressed to peoples or cultural operators working in culture. This is our strategic plan for 21-22. Our main goals, we can say, that are very linked to the mission of this event, because what we think is that culture can be a driver for development, so for social inclusion, of course. So not only at the economic level, but especially at the social level, for creating alliances between communities. So in our mission, there is the change of communities through culture, and the creation of alliances between different countries. How can we reach these objectives? Through different instruments and tools, like the creation of a fund that we want to launch at the beginning of September. Is a fund to collect money to finance scholarship for students coming from countries in emergency context or in crisis context. So we want to finance their education programs here in Italy, related, of course, to cultural heritage. Another goal that we want to reach is the creation of a global network of cultural operators all over the world, and the institution of an international training program about cultural heritage. Our main topics, as I was saying before, are cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, the development of attractiveness and tourism for countries based on culture, and research about contemporary cultural productions. Our tools are the strategic development plans, research studies, capacity building programs, internationalization, so creation of partnership at the European but also at the international level, creating connection in culture between different sectors, and of course, last but not least, the digital transition, which is now more than ever urgent for cultural institutions. This is our network, as you can see, is more focused on Europe, but we have consultants and advisors that we activate depending on the research projects, some of our partners. These are numbers from our last report for 2020. There are a lot of education activities and conferences and seminars, but of course everything was online. And these are some projects on the different areas that we cover. About cultural heritage, we have the development plan of the Staffarda Abbey, which is an abbey included in the UNESCO royal residences of Savoy in Piedmont. The archaeological site of Angkor in Cambodia, the management plan of tourism in Azerbaijan. On the cultural production and innovation sector, we have the development of strategies for the internationalization of the Torino UNESCO Creative City of Design, the project Fusion, which is a European project financed by Creative Europe, about the use of fashion and textile in making easier the active aging of people. And Arte al Futuro is our last research about emergent artistic careers and the cultural production in Italy, the independent cultural production in Italy. You can find only an Italian version for now because the publication has been published just 2 months ago. And about training and capacity building, we develop also university masters, like the Master in Cultural Property Protection in Crisis Response, which is addressed to people who want to develop skills and capacities on how to protect, preserve and enhance cultural heritage in conflict zone. These are other programs. Some of them are focused on youth and the engagement and empowerment of youth people in sustainable development projects. And at last, the Heritage Beyond Walls program that I want to show you with other slides. Sorry. So Heritage Beyond Walls is a program, a capacity building program addressed to Syrian students in culture-related disciplines. So only Syrian students, and the majority of experts and professors who was invited to talk in these programs were from Syria, of course. Why we choose Syria for this first edition of the program? Because in the last years we developed some training programs where people coming from Syria express the need and the emergency of having new capacities and new skills in the protection of their cultural heritage, and especially the capacity to develop projects to enhance their cultural heritage. After, of course, 10 years of wars who destroyed not only the physical culture but also the social feelings related to culture. Syria, as you maybe know, is one of the countries with more UNESCO sites. 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites and 3 elements inscribed in the Intangible Cultural Heritage List, and 1 biosphere reserve, so for a very small territory. And also Damascus, which is the oldest inhabited city in the world. So for this rich heritage, there was the need of developing something related. Of course, because this can be considered as a resource for development. And after the COVID-19, students in cultural heritage living in Syria was affected also by more isolation than before. So it was emergent to facilitate the access to knowledge. So Heritage Beyond Walls wants to establish an informational channel on Syrian university students to contribute the access to knowledge, breaking isolation, encouraging sharing and discussing, of course, enhancing capacities towards cultural heritage as a resource for recovery, for development, and for peace building. The program was made of 30 online teaching hours, 3 months of activities, and 1 month of online support in the development of projects, with 12 international speakers and 70 Syrian participants, of course, everything online. And we received more than 100 applications. 5 different topics: culture as capital, restoration and beyond, public archaeology, art and people, and historic cities. And I want to underline that the speakers invited in this program try to have a very informal dialogue with students to facilitate the dialogue and the initiatives from them. Okay, these are the topics. The first module was culture as a capital, to underline that capital can be cultural heritage can be a capital and a resource for the economic growth. Then historic cities, so how to deal with major disasters in historic cities like Damascus or Aleppo, and bring the community in the urban heritage. Then restoration and beyond, so what are the techniques and the methods of restoration, and what are the projects to develop. And public archaeology, so empowering people to generate collective and cooperative actions for a more sustainable future. And then at the end, art and people, so talking about the bond between art and society. These were the speakers. Some of them are representative of UNESCO, and others from university in Germany or in Syria and in Italy, of course. We had also archaeologists from the Egyptian Museum of Turin. And the program was asked also to the participants to develop a final project, and we received more than 40 projects about cultural expressions in Syria. We awarded the first 3. The first one was about the first classified was about the creation of digital support to visualize on a screen the ancient city of Damascus, so before bombing and destruction. The second classified was about the enhancement of intangible traditions related to the Hammam bath, so the Damascene bath. And the third classified was about the restoration of the Mevlevi Takia complex in Aleppo, of course being damaged and destroyed for the war. these were our partners. The program has been completely developed by Fondazione Sant'Agata in collaboration with the Egyptian Museum and other Italian institutions with the support of the UNESCO office in Venice. So this was only the starting point of this activity. All the projects that we received from Syrian university students were about especially tangible cultural heritage. So we can say that at this moment the war, the destruction is more visible, of course, on monuments and on sites. We didn't receive projects about the performing arts, for example, or about intangible cultural traditions, but we want to go more in deep about the intangible sphere, especially in the second edition. So we are also searching for partners who can who want to go on with this project, which is completely free for Syrian students. Of course, they don't have any scholar fee to pay. So, thank you. If you want to visit the website, you can find all the information and the report of the first edition. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you to Ottavia Arenella, and also the idea of the meeting is also to show, to express some case studies, and also to create the condition to have an exchange, and also to consider the opportunity, the possibility to have a common program in the future. Of course, it's very important. It's one of the goals of ITI is also to work to increase the cooperation between centers. This is a very important aspect for us. Generally, we consider an essential element to increase this element of the cooperation between the centers of ITI, but also, of course, with other institutions that can work. And also, we are very happy to listen that we are ready to cooperate by performing arts, by intangible heritage and other things. We have a very important experience with all the people that are here, can create a very important connection to develop some aspect, and also I'm sure that after the break we can create a common discussion, and please it's important to work together in this moment. Yes, please, Thomas.
Just one remark, because I see it's very close to the artist's rights spectrum. There are a lot of
yes, for the streaming is necessary.
Is it on? Yes. Just one remark for the connection between the intangible heritage and the artist rights. There are a lot of reports recently pointing especially to that issue. Just as an example, as we are now experiencing this terrible rollback of the live arts in Afghanistan, which are pointing directly to artists, and this is a destruction of a contemporary heritage which is very fresh and which has been growing within the last 10 years, step by step, but the people has been bombed during their performances, and they are now under enormous pressure, and it's just to see that the live performing arts will more or less disappear in Afghanistan under the regime of the Taliban, which are taking over now. And we see a couple of these elements right now, that they are more and more interfering to the aspect, so what is intangible heritage for arts and for live arts. And this aspect is very important, and it's very good to see that these connections are now spread it in that extent. Thank you.
Okay, now I would say that after the break, but also we have started, so Leva and Ketaguri, but from Georgia.
I just will do very short intervention to continue after the break. Regarding the last presentation, I think the ITI could be real good partner because ITI already created traditional theater forum, which is about intangible heritage worldwide. And this is quite important initiative because generally when we talk about intangible heritage includes state policies. It's always let's say focused on tangible heritage, and sometimes this is big problems that there is not guidelines to regarding intangible heritage, and because performing arts one of the biggest intangible heritage worldwide, I think the common activities to create academic scientific approach as guidelines how to work with performing arts might be very important topic for the joint project in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Levan. And also, I think that after the break we can develop the. I think that it's very important to have a very important effort in this moment, because also for the European Union there is the new generation of program, and we have discussed many times that we have to understand the new philosophy of the European program. And also, but there are some topics very important. For example, I'm very interested about the idea of the dialogue between tangible and intangible. Is very important, is a crucial point, because it's not the process of the museum this, but also is to create a common experience with an idea of intervention. The preservation is not the only horizon of our work. It's something living that we have to develop in a contemporary sense of involvement of all the citizenship. And also this is the topic that we can develop together, and it's very important to share the different experiences that we are conducting in this moment, and also to find a common strategy perhaps. Okay, now there is the break, the most important moment of the one day. Yeah, so. Okay. Okay, I don't know if someone want to start about the two intervention of Thomas. First, I have many questions, of course, generally, and also, but also if you. I don't know. Okay. Okay. I don't know if someone want to say something first. It's the microphone is open, and otherwise I can start with. Also, I would like to ask to Thomas something deeper, if it's possible, about the ACAR situation in this moment. What are the initiatives that you are doing in, and also what is your point of view that is a special window on the situation that we are living in this moment, and also there are a lot of signals that can describe a situation harder connected with the COVID consequences. And also, I would like to know what are the level of the intervention that you are doing. For example, in the ITI community, there is the example of a Hungry Center of ITI with some aspect very important of the situation of the censorship connected to the community of performers and so on, and also other activities that you can tell us about this. If you want to see there,
yes. Yes, just for the artist rights, it is, how to say, not really motivating to look to the situation, because if you don't have public performing spaces together, and if you don't have performing arts doing theater and acting in public spaces, you do see even less from the minimum of suppression which is normally to see. And as already has been described, we only see the tip of the iceberg of suppression to performing arts. No, we don't see even a part of the tip. I guess there is an enormous justification of suppression with the pandemic done in many countries, and you see that the performing arts trying to keep their public spaces on the digital area, but this is different. People who do not share the same space do have different forms of communication, and we see it in the forms of discourses which are much more radical and much more divided, or mirroring a much more divided societies in many parts. I would try to put this together as a development and as a sign for a change. The digital spaces creates bubbles in which we are interacting only with people which we somehow more or less share the same opinion, and these bubbles becoming more and more fortresses. And a theater is a much more open space where very different people are coming together for a certain time and having a much more open access to each other and to the things which are on the stage. If things become digital and the comments becoming digital, the dialogue is different, and the dialogue changed, which is described in many essays and comments as more radical, more divided, and as I said in the beginning of my intervention, the idea and the position you're trying to represent is much and more connected to how you are read as a person or as a group or whatever. And this is not somehow defined by your intentions, it is defined by the intention of your counterpart. And the dialogue between intention and the audience, if it is not live and if it is just in the bubbles of the digital space, is very much different. And this development, we have no idea where we are right now. We are in the middle of something which do something with us, and we will see it maybe in 5 years what this pandemic finally made with our behavior. This is one aspect. The other aspect is probably that the dialogue between audience and artists has now been for more than 1 year, especially when it is between different cultures, cut. So what is your audience when you start to travel again to other countries? How this audience did develop in between? Do they look in the same way? Are they still curious and open when they look to other cultures and to other artists from other countries? How do they receive this signals? How is this interaction right now? How did it change? There are processes which definitely are not finished and which will still be continued. So this is the more cultural aspect. The rights aspect is that we see more and more like the pandemic and hygienic conditions and rules are used to silence just opposition or even public discourse. This is sometimes to be justified by pandemic situations, but sometimes it is misused, and the border between use and misuse is very, very tiny and is very often just fluently. And so it's very different to say, so here we have a clear case of censorship, and it's not to justify and we need to intervene and to make it public, or to say, well, this is just due to the present very extraordinary situation. So this is the one thing. The next thing is the economic censorship and the economic pressure. So due to the pandemic, a lot of funds will be cut, and how they will be cut is of course a political decision. So who gets the money after the pandemic, when a lot of money is needed for recreation of many structures of the society? Culture will be one of the receiving parts of the society, but who will get it and for what political decisions this funds will be given to artists is now something which creates a new, very deep dependency from state and governmental decisions and policies. So it depends who is on power when the public funds are given to artists, and who will receive it. And the independency of artists has been enormously shrinked in the time of the pandemic, because the dependency from funds and support was suddenly very big just to survive as independent artists or even as structures. that the possibility of governmental authorities to create structures that follow their own rules is much bigger right now. And this is something where we are in the middle, and we cannot say we have a clear view on it. We only know that the development is dangerous and is definitely not good for the independency of the arts.
Generally, we have shared also in the last very far Congress of ITI about the problem of the mobility, and also about the situation of the visa for artists, for example. I think with the pandemic situation, the mobility start to be a very great disease that we are to front more and more, of course. Also, I think that it's very important in this moment also to consider what are the real consequences in the performing arts experience connected with the disease of COVID. It's very important to try to have an interpretation of this situation that we have to front. It's very important because there are a new condition that, of course, the crisis it's very, very strong also from the point of view of the work, because many people has no condition to stay, to have the continuity of the work, and also there are a lot of companies that are closing, and also the theater, the building are closed for a very long time, and also but I think that it's very important to create an interpretation wider of the situation, not only connected with the condition that we have to face in this moment, but also is an interpretation stronger, I think.
Well, I guess one aspect which I could add is that the economic pressure to arts is enormously growing. We have seen this in the discussion, I just can say it for Germany, that the discussion about how to apply for support for the resilience funds in Germany was just an enormous push towards economic thinking for arts. So it was a big step to implement economic structures and to economize the whole sector in a much bigger extent than it has been before. So that's the funding policy. The other thing is what you said, Fabio, about mobility. Yes, there is a new discussion about the new ways of mobility, because we saw that artistic mobility is a big aspect of international exchange. And the demand for alternative forms of mobility is big. This is right, and this is agreed for everybody. On the other hand, there is the problem of mobility justice or mobility injustice, because alternative methods of mobility needs an economic basis for that. If you travel alternatively, it probably needs more time and probably more money. And groups, especially from the African continent, who have existing base on touring and needs to tour to Europe and have to have many stations of in different places to earn their money just for the next month, they have only very few alternatives. So this new thinking about equal partnerships is just a big task even for the richer nations who really have more choices than those states and people who are from countries which do not have access to good or to somehow bearable funding. This is the one thing. The other thing is now, for the next month as well, the situation of vaccination. So if we think about the next ITI Congress, probably in next year, we as well have to think that a Congress could not exclude people who have no access to the vaccines. And I guess in a couple of months it would not be a worldwide situation where we can really say that everybody who needs a vaccination against COVID could get it, and that needs a solution for that. So this is something what has to do with mobility injustice, and there are a couple of factors which are connected there, and we have to be very much aware when we discuss now about alternative forms of artistic mobility, about what the UNESCO Convention calls preferentially treatment of partners. So those who have the weaker economic situation needs a bigger support from those who have a stronger situation in the economic funding.
Of course, if you want to ask something, it's open microphone, of course. I don't know if you want to ask something on Thomas about this. If I can add just a little thing, I think that it's very important to underline by the artistic community that there is the pandemic is not only connected with the economical crisis, it's also connected with the social crisis. And also for this, the social crisis need the support of the cultural work. And also we are living in Italy, in which the debate, the discussion is only how to invest the money in economical direction. But also it's very important to consider the social disease that is very, very strong, and it's very important too, of course. Also, yes, it's the mobility, passed the mobility. Do you want to have some question or no? I do. Yes. I want to ask about the microphone.
I would like to ask you about your opinion about what I've heard regarding to the new EU policy regarding the arts, about the mobility, which is considered as a digital mobility at the moment, which from one side is, I mean, there is a kind of new door that we could open, but there's also a big danger if we, of course, we talk about the sustainability of environmental responsibility, but also that moving all the mobility and meetings to online, which was considered even officially in the EU program right now, is a big, I don't know, a danger or is a chance, or how you think about it? Because
I would say both. It's on the one hand, of course, an opportunity, as we have been experienced it during the last year, to bring people together, which normally would take much more effort to do so. On the other hand, it has the danger that it could be a kind of easy solution. So we have the very restrictive visa policy for non-European people, which especially from the global south. So if it is like this, that if you cannot get these artists live to your performance, just develop something digitally to have this artist just in your performance in a digital way. So, and then all discussions about mobility justice and so on are finished, because it's done. I would not say it's a kind of black and white decision. It is a certain way to take it pragmatically, in a way to develop certain projects much easier than it has been before, because the digital tools are in between there, and it's possible to use them. And they can be very productive for preparation of performances and so on, but they could not somehow take a live performance in the same quality on board to say we make it as a solution instead of traveling. We see that there is as well another aspect of it, because sooner or later we will have new negotiations between the EU and the US about the world trade regulations, the so-called contract about free trade between the Europe and the United States. And up to now, it was always that there was a kind of very strong, supported by the French nation, an exception for culture, the exception culturelle, which has a certain tradition there, not to implement culture in the kind of international trade. But this is now under an enormous pressure. It has always been from the US side to implement a culture as a exchange like all other services, and becomes much easier if culture becomes a digital service. And if culture has its own digital channels, which is, they are now growing. I mean, every theater is now its own broadcast station, more or less. And it's just a matter of time when this more or less very much widespread environment will be channeled by international law and international trade. Because right now we already experience this summer in Theater der Welt that if we just put performances on the internet via streaming from our festival, we had to do geofencing, so that it's only available in Germany. If it's just on the internet and could be accessed from everywhere, there are totally different conditions suddenly, and you have to pay much more. So this is a new way of generating income for the groups, of course, but this is a new way of thinking for festivals, what means digitally broadcasting. And so you see that there are more and more rules there, and if suddenly we have the situation that performing arts are now a part of the of digital distribution, so then it's very different to take an exemption for live arts for these negotiations as it has been before, because film and music is already in. They are goods now, and theater and performing arts were out, so they had special conditions. And so this will be within the next months a very tiny and interesting negotiation how this will go on, because the Biden government will take on the negotiations as well. Trump did cut it, but now it will go on, the TTIP negotiations. And the thing is that most of this is undercover, it's not public. They are specialists and lawyers, and the culture is more or less a part of these negotiations, which will be put in or will be taken out. And it was 10 years ago when the first round of negotiations came to an end and did not have been finished. That suddenly a couple of public services woke up, including the culture, to point to this status of negotiation. So that is dangerous. So a lot of public services, a lot of public spaces, a lot of public goods will become suddenly a part of international trade and will be ruled and regulated by international trading regulations. And this is totally different than the support for culture on the national basis has been practiced until then. So this is a kind of future which interferes now with the digitalization as well.
A little question for this, because for countries where are under pressure of dictatorship or something like that, it's very hard to go into the digital conversation in art. For example, Turkey or other countries. Is there an idea of a program which goes not over US, like Zoom, or which is out of the control? Because I think that's a very important point, even for the work in the lands themselves, because sometimes theater is not so much under control. Yeah, so is there a discussion or ideas exactly in the international relationships? And I think it's a very important item also for ITI, because we are working with a lot of theater groups together all over the world, which have a lot of problems. So, yeah. And I think even in the east of Europe, it's the people from Poland or Ungarn, they know it better, but I think, it's a question.
Yeah. I know it from the Martin Roth initiative, and it's in a way divided into parts. So there's the one thing which is the public channels where you can easily access and spread with Zoom and so on. So the normal digital ways of interacting, and there are several others and are still underdeveloped. Of course, there are now tendencies, especially for Europe, to create own structures which are not depending from the US law, and are under the rules of the European digital law, which is much stricter than the US. Anyway, this is not finished yet, and of course the US technology is much more advanced and has been used. So it will take time until something similar exists in Europe, or even on a national basis, which has more or less the similar advantages like the people already experienced. So it's different to do something worse or smaller or with lesser performance, even if it is more safe, when things are available and the consequences are not so visible. The other thing is that, of course, there are safe channels where especially artists in danger or who need to escape and need quick solutions and safe channels, which some initiatives already set up, and they learned a lot from the human rights organization and from the field of the journalists who need to support their sources, which are secured, which are anonymous, and this is used, but mostly for exchange of emails or of messages or of files. So this is not a broadcasting system. Something between this ongoing developing impulses to just give counterparts to Google and Amazon and so on in Europe, and the small secured solutions which are just for basic communications, is still open. And I don't know, we just had a project last year called Digital Stages, which tries to develop something, and in between I know how difficult it is. Takes enormous resources, knowledge, people which are normally very good paid from the digital sector to develop something which really works. And in between there is a solution there on Digital Stage which works quite good for musicians and singers, just to sing together and doing music pieces together without or with very, very minimal delays, even on different places. And this is just a kind of technological effort which took 1 year now, and now it's just somehow working. But yes, this is a big field, and the EU is trying, as far as I know, to develop something mostly for the industry, but of course if something is developed for the industry, it will be used by the arts as well.
So I want to go back about the question about the European Union policies. I think that it's very important also to consider the transformation of some perspective by culture to creative, the aspect of the audience development. That is something that comes not from European debate, but from United States debate. The topic of audience development, or now of audience engagement, is something connected with the creative industries. But the topic of the social emergency is not possible to face only by the perspective of the creative industries. It's an opportunity, of course, but also we are living a crisis of the public representation. Also, the United Nations and UNESCO are living a very, very strong, very deep crisis from many, many years. And also, this is a topic that also involves the ITI community too. Also, the relationship, for example, with China is not a simple topic, this one. And also, what is the Biden now policies is something different, because there is a different passage now connected with the idea of a leadership in connection with Europe, more stronger and stronger. And also, I think that we have to discuss this new panorama that we are living in this connection. Also, we have to consider this in a deep way. And also, for me, what is my personal attitude in this moment is also to consider always the point of view of the community in this moment. We have to relaunch always the idea, the topic is the community, not the national economy, for example. And also in this way, perhaps we can find new opportunity. Also for this, I've said before in the introduction, the model of residencies is also an answer, is a possible answer. It's not connected with the process of the economy, of the distribution, of the productions. This is an economic attitude that has a lot of limit, I think, that can find an opportunity for the mainstream of the performing arts, but is not enough, especially in this moment. And also is connected with the cultural heritage too, always. We consider always the cultural heritage like a political issue. It's not only as something connected with the preservation of something, but it's connected with the experiences of the community. And also in this direction, the problem of digital divide is another aspect politically that we have to work on this, not in the idea to stay on the line of the diffusion of the production. For example, the rights of the artistic products are very difficult. For example, we have lived with our channel on YouTube. There are something that was censored because some materials was not considered, was protected. But I have the way to use and also to be regular with this. And also, this is something that can amplify this situation of the economical control of the cultural diffusion of the experiences. And also, I think that this is a topic on which it's very important to work, and it's something radically connected with the conflict, radically connected with the artist's right and so on. It's not only, of course, we have to face the problem of the migrants, or the people that are the refugees, the people that are living in country in which the conflict is very present. But also there is another level that involves all the world in this moment, that is a very, very important, the real field, the real ground on which we have to work together. Okay.
Just one.
Yes, please.
I just want to pick this up because I guess the idea of residency is really important, and because it has to do with community, and it's just the opposite of the concept of visiting. So if you have guest performances traveling around, this is a concept which has been done, and it was a kind of business model for independent artists before, but right now I guess it's much more important to share a certain part of life with each other as resident artists and as resident people, as guests for a longer time, and to produce something together, then to invite and present it. And this, of course, includes much more the way of new ways of mobility, because it's less mobility, it's more shared parts of production at one place. And on the other hand, it has much more to do with relating to a certain community, because it's not a kind of global community which can watch a performance in many countries in more or less the same way, but this is much more tailored to a special community which you share a certain part of your life, because you have been living there and you experienced a certain atmosphere and a certain way of being, and then it's different than you produce something home and spread it over the world. So this probably could be a first step towards an alternative way of doing performing arts.
Talking about residencies, I think that from an economic point of view, residence should be also longer than now, because like in the past, artists visited cities, spent more days in cities, and wrote about them. So there were also another economic impact on this kind of experiences. So not only the residency for production, but also for the experience of the city, experience of the place which is hosting justice.
Yes, also I think that initially we have to work for this meeting in the distillery that is closed here, and also we will visit Friday together. But also I want to recall this the experience that we are living in the distillery. We have called this for a theater of community. This is the subtitle of the distillery project. And to create a theater for the community, we have started to ask to the community, what are your needs? And we have started to collect the needs of the community. This is not a usual answer by a theater. And we have to restart to reconsider this like a theater, like an element that stay in a community. And also is the life of the building also is different. For example, in Italy, the school are not in the connection, in a real network with the community. Is open for the hours in which there are the lessons, then close the door and finish. The connection with the community is very, very invisible. But everyone allow to this building. And also it's the same for the theater. The theater many times is not connected with the quartier, with the place real. And we have to reopen this connection. And also this is another opportunity that we can launch. And is not usual. Also the tradition of from the Commedia dell'arte, the tradition is the tournée that created the professionalization of the women and men of theater. Is the tournée, the aspect. But also the tournée is not the residence. The residencies are something that are in connection. Also this comes from the visual artist, this dimension. That is a restitution in the residency's experience. And the restitution is something connected with the community always. And also to redefine also the perception of the place and so on. But also I'm strongly convinced that this is the only way to recreate the real environment of exchanges. Otherwise, there is not the condition. Also, we have to consider the crisis also the great company of theater, because if the tournée are locked, on the contrary, we can consider the residencies. It's possible to do also during lockdown. We have hosted some residencies, and also is a very important aspect, this one. We have found an opportunity to continue to work in the residencies way, also in lockdown period, because it was possible to have a very little dimension of participation, but we have continued to work and to prepare something, to discuss it together and to have an intervention in a certain way. Okay.
I think this concept of residencies is a very good way of embracing this idea of audience development, because when you say we just ask our community what are their needs, so then this is something which creates a new, or the basis for a new way of ownership. So this is not the space of that and that group, and they are open it for a while, and you can be a guest there, and then you have to leave and see the performance. It's just more the space itself is owned by a community, and if they can experience that it's open for them, the relation is different than just to be let in for a certain event. I see this in another way as well with libraries. Just libraries are becoming in Germany more and more in bigger cities a place which is open, even on weekends, and they try to get people in just with lounges and ways to be together. So this creating of public space has very much to do with theater, and the public spaces are shrinking, or they are commercialized, so that you have to pay when you are somewhere in former public spaces, if it is a restaurant, a coffee, whatever, a place to sit. So you have to consume, and if you can try to reverse this development with this idea of community-owned space, like theaters, libraries, and so on. So this is a way to really develop something which has to do with audience development. But an audience who really owns a public space will really support its structures.
Talking before with Ottavia about another problem, which is I would call it digital mobility justice. The digital divide. Fabio was speaking also about the great opportunity that this period represented for underrepresented artists coming from countries that live in very difficult situations or in conflict situations. This gave opportunities, but also there was a big problem. First of all, like a basic problem in the connection. So we experienced a lot of times of failed connections, which were very frustrating also for the artists to be invited in an event, but then to withdraw because of this digital problem. I would like to ask to Ottavia also about this experience with the project Heritage Beyond the Walls in Syria. What happened?
Yes. So we had more than 70 participants from Syria, but we didn't face the problem of electricity. In fact, during the first talk, some of the students expressed the problem of electricity because from 1 to 5 hours a day there's a lack of electricity in Syria. So they had to recharge their computers, recharge their mobile phones to have connections. But this underlined also the real need of those students to participate in the program. And another problem was the platform. We used Zoom, and some of the students more capable of using technologies used another ID connection to enter Zoom. So yes, digital tools can help in creating connections between different countries, but in theater and all sectors of culture can create the emergency of other problems. For example, also in theater, I work for a cultural association, a big theater, a small, sorry, theater with 90 seats, so like yours. We can say that digital performances were a plan B. Also, actors involved in the performances didn't consider that like real performance, because connection is not always good, because people don't see you well, don't listen to you well. So the pandemic create other necessities, other needs, and we have to work a lot on performing arts to face these problems. So, thank you.
I would like to share with you some reflections, because on the one hand, this is reality that pandemic stimulates a lot of alternatives, because we need to find solutions. But same time, we need to realize that for sure these solutions belong to the specific time, and anyway pandemic will be finished and everything come back to the let's say normal reality, and performing arts with his main tool, this is life connections and the life art, it's come back. Of course, we can imagine that we will use a lot of tools which was created during this time, and as Thomas mentioned, some of them became main commercial tools, and still I think performing arts will come back to his old forms. But what I try to rethink now, then what is development where we need to find the role of the state policy and the citizens' initiatives, because most of the problems what you mentioned we already mentioned, and tomorrow I will try to give some cases what we try to do, and most of our initiatives is belong, let's say, not so much to wait relation with state or policymakers who are always changing, and they always have their agenda, which is not very often related with artistic and creative agenda, unfortunately. And what is the opposite? And opposite is always citizens' initiatives and how citizens can create alternatives. And in this sense, I think we need already to stress in ITI activities more relation with citizens, communities, and what you mentioned, I think this is very right way, because we already think to focus first of all on new generation, and I think this is very important because we need to look more to the future than just to keep relation with past. We are more difficult to change, and already to think about new spaces, relation between urban and rural areas, and how we can bring rural values to urban values and urban values to rural values. And I try to use definitions that we need to think a lot about value-based societies, because without this tool it's quite difficult to develop performing arts and to come to the main ideas how we can serve to the society. And it's why it became very important audience development, but in this case we need to look to the new audiences in new spaces and already in new generations or different generations, how we can bridging the generation, because still it's why I start with the case that we need to think how to return back to our traditional tool with life relations, performing arts as life relation, who really still keep this tool of the bridging of generations, and we need to prepare for post-pandemic activities. As Thomas mentioned, we need to think how different will be audience when they come into the indoor or outdoor productions, and what we will try to say them. And the content, our narratives, it's already very important, because are we still try to create conservative, let's say classic stories, or we need to be more close to our audience, to share our stories with their stories. And we can find that we have several layers of the content of the future performing arts, and already the targets of future performing art. It's why I think the digital tools or any innovations, it will be just the extra possibility for us for self-expression. But we still will be more important with our stories or narratives, because our audience still waiting for us, listen or look or just follow us in our self-expression. And I think this might be already one part of discussions for the future meetings too, involving again different generations and to find more what is the opinion of the new and future audience. Thank you.
I want to add something to you, Levent. I think we have to fight for this, because the development in the last 1.5 years is so huge, and the gaps between North and South, and even in the community in every country, the gaps, the Schere, of the economic and the possibilities, it's totally huge. And what you said, Fabio, it's a political aim, huh? And I think really, of course, there is the digital world, and it's a development which we have to take it in our work, but really in the communities, real theater, maybe with digital insight, of course, because there is a young generation, there is totally adapt in digital, everything in digital, games, life, usual life, and so on. but I think it would be very nice for the ITI to create, yes, maybe a new group or something like this, and to be aware of what is coming and what we want to keep. And I think theater is real. It's a social process, a melting point of different people in a theater space, like McBurney said it 2 years ago, I think, on the Theater World Day. And we have to be totally aware, and it will not coming back automatically. I'm very sure when I'm looking for the development in Switzerland, it's a lot of things are totally normal now to make it digital. So because it's easier, it's cheaper, and so on. Like Thomas said it before, and yeah, I think the awareness about it and really to fight for it, it will be an aim in the next years.
Just one last remark, hopefully from me, is about this gaps, this new gaps. I want to remark to. I guess there are stronger generation gaps in between, because we have a whole generation which experienced the pandemic at that point when they start their professional careers. This creates a different view to the generation who is, or the generations who are already more or less set in their professions as a kind of injustice. So they look differently than before to their future, which was more or less to plan in the past. And right now, this planning and developing yourself, your career, your way of life, is somehow cut and divided and unclear as perspectives. So the perspectives are differently than they have been some years before for the young generations. And this is the one thing. And then the other thing is the permanently changing communities. So with the migration, with people who changed their social status, there have been and are a lot of movement between the classes and the social statuses, and people are not just the homogeneous, more or less homogeneous audience which we knew from before. So the new learning about a changing audience and about the community, which is not automatically an audience, is really a big task for public institutions like theater. And there have been enormously changes, and there have been new gaps and new developments which needs to be taken into consideration of our work. So there needs to be a couple of very new aspects which are coming in with the pandemic.
Which I'm also seeing is that theater is more and more, let's say, used, but in a positive way, in different social contexts, and that theater is like finding, a new, let's say, existence, way of existence. It's not theater anymore as only doing shows in communities and theaters, but theater is used in very different contexts, in education, or theater for, I don't know, people with demence, or like, and this is becoming more and more like a field, which I see at least in our academy and in Switzerland, which is a new field of also young artists, which are coming out of the schools, which are looking for the sense of doing theater. I mean, it's not only me as an actor, I want to develop my personality and I want to act, but I want to give something to society, and I think that is quite a positive new way of looking for a sense of our work, which doesn't exclude to do shows and to do our theater work, but I think that is something a new integration to society, which is very interesting.
I just want to comment on this small reflection about theater and theater life. I think this pandemic actually showed us that things are completely changed. And I see that, okay, in several levels, but I would focus on one. And this is that actually when all this pandemic arrived, all mainstream and important theaters have been closed. And artists are left still there trying to work, and they performed no matter what. So there was a completely new parallel scene that scene was existing before, but now I think it showed that there is a full parallel scene that actually explode without entering into premises and theaters. And so at this point now we have like a division between this parallel scene, alternative, which is not alternative anymore, which is almost mainstream now, and all these institutions that now trying to open up. So I don't think is this the time for them to teach institutions how to open up, or just to continue with this new line of new life. So it's just, I think it's just a next level. So it's like a completely next level of communication. So I'm not sure is this performing arts are not necessarily linked to the stage and to the buildings, because there is so many amazing programs that they are existing in alternative spaces, in churches, in outside specific spaces. So it's like parallel processes. And I think that this pandemic actually showed us that this construction that we believe is strong and important is not strong as much, or is not quick as much to follow up with the new changing. So I think that this new reading, this situation actually showed us that the people in this field need really to think over about the arts once again, and to stay a little bit and see, okay, this direction, it's probably coming to an end, or needs to be changed, or needs to do some very important changings in the construction. So I think this is interesting time, at least in my opinion. It's very good.
Motivated by the topics you are exchanging with us and Natasha's expose, I would like to say shortly about my country. This last year and this year, these 2 years of crisis, were sort of crystallization of the very deep crisis in contemporary performing arts in my country, who are practically semi-corrupted. And we find out, because after so many political crises and scandals, artists are slowly becoming more brave to talk openly, that each national theater in Macedonia has employed 50% of unknown people, phantoms, who are very well paid, and nobody knows how they look like. This is crazy, and we are going to talk about this louder and louder in the upcoming period. And that starts with the previous government. The actual government is continuing this very delicate policy, and those people are practically doing completely something else, but they share their salaries with representatives of political parties. I think this is, I don't know what is happening in other countries, but this is very scandalous, and it's true. And finally we know why we have non-existing cultural policies. Lately, we use this diplomatic term. We have, how can I say, very fragile cultural policy in my country. Practically, the culture and the art is jeopardized, is maluse, how can I say, it's becoming this last 25 years like a tool, like a channel for money washing. From the other hand, theater last year, national theaters were completely passive. Only the alternative scenes shows their vitality by using their already existing capacities of creativity and certain material tools in order to to start and finish their performances. I must admit, also for our center, the digital tools are sort of a chance because of, how can I say, easier international distribution that costs nothing, just the enthusiastic energy and organized time to do that, to use your mailing lists, to use your groups on the social media for permanent distribution, hoping that somebody will take a time to open the file and to see the project and to share negative, neutral or positive critics. But the awakening of national theater is happening now, but hardly one performance per year. They continuously delaying their festivals, they're delaying their, how can I say, repertories. And I think that a lot of delicate truths will come up on the surface very soon. And we are in front of local elections, and I don't know what's going to happen. There are various predictions. There is a lot of mafia involved and in the mainstream politics, and a lot of, how can I say, fractions near to the Albanian terrorists, and a lot of Macedonian criminals who are deeply involved and implemented into the how can I say, mainstream politics. And I don't want to bother you too much with that, but because everything is connected, because crises are also crystallization of what is really going on, no matter of the world crisis, but no matter of the delicate relations with our neighbors of the Balkans. From the very first day of independence of Macedonia, we have problem with corrupted government, and that's the core problem on every level in my country. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. This was a little insight into the part of the iceberg, which is normally not visible. And but we can be sure that the interdependency to developments in other countries with this development is there, and we see it in Hungary when the structures are changing for the University of the SZFA, and which just has been turned into a foundation which is run by economic persons from the oil industry and so on, and or by politicians, so which are people no longer from the arts field anymore, or only those who are really fitting to the policy. And so if you have tendencies like this in European countries, you can be aware that there will be an interference with the whole development, and that it's not something which is only within the national borders. So it affects us all in a certain way. And the idea to create as much independency as possible in the field of arts really has to do with a new reading of community and citizenship. So as you said, these new pop-ups of ideas, of alternative spaces, is a mirror of the social dynamics in the society, and we see it as well in the development as a follow-up of the digitalization, that people moving out from the cities to the rural areas, to the countrysides, because they are more and more independent from mobility and from a defined working space. So that creates as well a new audience, and as well as new centers and margins relations, and this is a part of the dynamic which is definitely something has to do with the theater and with the development of the theater and the relation to these changing communities. And I think this is the only way to create this new way of relationship to the community and to the audience, to create this new ownership that if you have spaces or if you have institutions, they should be as transparent and as open as possible, and then they are carried by the community, and this is more or less the way where a lot of institutions are not going to. And of course they have different economic bases, those who are more stable and better funded, trying now to do these alternative steps as well. And it has to be taken into consideration that the chances are very different. If a theater has rehearsed during the pandemic a lot of new productions, and they are coming all out now in this more or less tiny time window where public performances are possible, to meet an audience which now suddenly has an enormous choice of possibilities. And additionally, the independent groups are now as well able to perform something, but they of course did not have so many productions already ready to show, like the big institutions who did not, who only have to stop the performances but could rehearse. And this is now an imbalance between the independent scene and the governmental funded theater structures, which of course creates a new problem for the independent theaters, who have to earn their money with their performances and do not have this kind of structural support. And you see the dynamics are big, and the imbalances are creating new imbalances as well. And so the task for us as people of the performing arts are enormously, and it's good to put this all on the table.
I would like to say two little things. One is about Ivanka mention of the corruption. I think generally in the experience of conflict zones, I have developed a perception very precise that corruption is a way of governance. It's not a right way. Is a dimension very precise of governance. And also we have to front this like an element of a way to manage the governmental dimension of the power of something. It's not. It's very important to consider this. You know that the organized crime in South Italy is very important, and also the most important level to understand is and for me is an aspect of the conflict zone. The presence of organized crime is a dimension of a conflict area, very clear, because there is the society, the community, and a very strong economical power, very, very relevant, that is deeply involved with the power, with the government, because it's very, very huge. For example, the touristic economy in this area is deeply connected with the organized crime. And also, this is a problem not only of South Italy, it's the problem of the European Union, because it's there are very important studies on the presence of organized crime in Germany, for example, is very important. But someone considered this like an element of a folkloristic dimension of South. No, it's the dimension of the economy. Like the presence of the drug commerce in the United States is not something not connected with the management of the power, the governance idea, like the Foucault dimension of the governance. Now there is a utilization of the concept of governance, like the way in which we can manage the power is not exactly this. is wider, the concept. And also it's very important to consider the corruption and also the colonization of the place, of the cultural environment. It's very important, this presence of corruption. It's not, for this, what you say, we have to consider in a deep way, in a very important way, because it's the way also to create the tools to overcome this situation. This is also it's very important to say, to declare that but also the mainstream production in Italy, or the cultural production in Italy, is deeply connected. There are some fields of performing arts that are deeply connected with organized crime. For example, the great event, for example, the security of great event are connected with organized crime in many cases, very important. For example, the logistics too, and other things. Also, we are discussing with the municipality about the idea of management of the 2 public theater here. Very big, historically very important. One is the Teatro Paesiello that we have started in 2010 to manage, but also there is another place bigger and very important. And suddenly, when we have started to discuss it, someone has started to say from the public part, yes, but there are many people that work here, and so, and I know very well what is this mention, very clear. And also, the only way is to consider this like an element, dynamic element, to overcome really, and to work in a strong way. One of the partners in this distillery is Libera, is an association that works against mafia. And it's very important for us to continue to work with them, and also in which the theater play a role very important for the sensibilization of the young generation and so on. But also to say there are some aspects that are elements that we have to use, and also to create not only to declare there are corruption, okay. We have to consider this like an economical element that is working strongly, and we have to face in a very strong way too. The other aspect is connected with the dimension of the festival. Now the festival has to be transformed for the condition of COVID, and also it's very important to restart to consider this in an opportunity. I'm sure that we are living an opportunity, like always when we have a crisis, we have an opportunity. It's very important to work in this direction, but also we have to develop more and more a new project of something. It's impossible to repeat the same structure, the same model. Can't work again, this model, and also it's an opportunity. The season of festival in Italy started in 60s with the Spoleto Festival and so on, and then they have lived a very strong transformation in Sant'Arcangelo, in other places. But also we have to relaunch a new idea for this. Also, it's very important to create this, because I think that we can't repeat the same model, and we have to find a new opportunity for this.
I just wanted to adjust. And this summer I was at Avignon Festival in France, and it was really strange. It felt wrong. I was there as audience, but there was no festival feeling at all. And so I just wanted to adjust that we have to rethink what means festival today. And I'm not sure if, because Levan said before that we might come back to the life from before, I'm not so sure, or maybe I misunderstood you, I don't know, that we will come back to from the life from before. I mean, theater and festivals, it will be different, it will be changed. And I see it as you also, I like to see it as an opportunity, something with a chance also now.
Just to add one thing about using reality. We had recently a nice exchange online about mobility organized by On the Move with European and African artists, and there was the new term which came up, which normally is not considered so clearly in festival planning and artistic mobility, which was the use of the so-called informal mobility in Africa, which is totally different from those which we normally plan and take into consideration. If you travel inside Africa, you have to use a lot of informal mobility ways, passing borders, passing checkpoints where you have to pay people. It has to do with corruption, it has to do with the whole structure, and it cannot be until now in no part be a kind of a calculation of normal travel like it is in Europe normally. So this kind of informality, which is a reality in other parts of the world, needs to be taken into consideration more and more, as it is the corruption in parts of our societies or communities where we have to see, and we have to know it, and we have to see how we work with it. The big discussion about the clean money of funding leads at the end to the way, so where is the tax money comes from? Does it come from arms exports of our industry in Germany, which we use later on for cultural issues, or is this okay, or is this morally somehow indifferent? So these are discussions which are necessary to go to certain points, but on the other hand there is a reality which we have to know and which we have to work with.
I tried just to explain what I mean, that we come back to the live arts, where on the one side there will be still performing by actors, and on another side it still will be actors. Of course it will be different, like in any centuries how theater was developed. Maybe we will use a lot of new tools, include digital or broadcasting, but I think performing arts will keep his main, let's say, understanding of expressions through the live performing. And this is quite important, because I just give you one case. One of my colleagues from China, he just gave such examples that, for example, it's very important to go to the stadium to watch football. But for many years, a lot of people watch football through TV broadcasting, and already there is a lot of cases when group of people watching together. I mean, a lot of sport games, because the people in this case, they start to keep this live community watching through television broadcasting. And this is already one of the examples how performing arts could be developed through community watching of the live broadcasting. And this could be, of course, innovations, that some of the people will go indoor and some of the people still will continue to watch live broadcasting. But the element of the live art, it will be kept. And I think that through centuries we can go to a lot of examples. We have a lot of pandemics. This is not first one. Even during the Shakespeare time, when in London was pandemic, the globe starting traveling in countryside. And this was that time, let's say, innovative solution how to escape pandemic but keep performing arts. And same we can give in different times how when cinema was created, everybody talking how performing arts will disappear soon. When television appears, everybody talk how cinema will be disappeared. But we still keep all of them, because we are rich with diversity of self-expression. And of course, future performing art will be different. And of course, this experience of the new tools, this make, I think, possibility in expression more rich. But still, I think if we lose this tool of live connection, then it will be, I think, quite a big problem to keep philosophy of performing arts in general. Thank you.
Okay. If there are some other questions or interventions, we can finish the first session of our work. Thank you very much. And also we will restart at 4 o'clock. And now you are free to visit our wonderful city, and I remember you that this evening we have a dinner together with a little surprise for you, for us, not only for you. Also, okay, thank you very much. See you.